Before we start, just a quick reminder. The views and content shared on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and are not a substitute for professional advice. Please check the full disclaimer in the show notes for more information.
Welcome to Self-Centered, the podcast that's all about you. We're your hosts.
I'm Allie, a therapist and life coach.
And I'm Katie, a fitness coach and personal trainer. We know what it's like to feel burnt out, taken for granted, and like your life revolves around everyone but yourself.
By learning to trust yourself, prioritize your needs, and set healthy boundaries, we help you break free from guilt, overfunctioning, and toxic patterns that keep you stuck in relationships and a life that doesn't truly serve you.
Join us each week as we dive into the tools, stories, and mindset shifts you need to create a life that centers you.
Because being self-centered isn't selfish, it's essential. Today we're going to talk about how to deal with people thinking about you negatively, misunderstanding you, talking badly about you to other people, going on a smear campaign, and how to deal with it in a way that keeps you connected to your truth about who you are and living according to your truth, your wants, and your needs.
So basically, this is the episode for the recovering people pleaser who is struggling to be self-centered because they're worried about what people will think.
How do you think about people pleasing? Because for me, that never resonated. For me, it was like wanting to be a good person for me. But thinking that other people had the authority on what being a good person is. So I guess that could be seen as people pleasing, but I'm not doing it to please them just to please them. I'm doing it to please them because I think, or I thought that their perspective decided whether or not I'm a good person.
Interesting. Okay.
How do you think about it?
So when I think of the concepts of smear campaigns and people thinking poorly against me, that reflects who I am as a person. And so I have to make sure that the people that I'm talking to think of me a certain way so that those things don't come to pass. And so basically I cater to their wants and needs so that they think that I'm a good person.
Because you don't want the smear campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
See, 'cause I guess when I was younger, well, we'll get into it, our experiences, but preparing for this episode, I was thinking about all these different experiences that I've had, and it was interesting to see kind of my own evolution in thought and how I deal with it. And my first memory is I was dating this guy, my first boyfriend in 8th grade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I would
Early.
say I was dating this guy. It was like, it was kind of real, which is kind of weird, but
We
he
hold
wanted
hands
to
at
have
lunch.
sex with me. Isn't that crazy?
Oh,
And
damn.
I said no.
Good for you.
Yeah. Crazy. I'm like, 8th grade. What the heck? So anyway, in 8th grade, we were dating. We dated over the summer. We broke up at the end of the summer. And obviously, we're about to go into high school, into 9th grade freshman year. And our town was so small that our high school was made up of our town and the adjoining town. And he, over the summer after we broke up, joined the football team. So he was getting to know all the kids and the whole football team, the older grades as well, from the other town before I did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he basically talked shit about me and like made up all these rumors about me so that when I started school as a freshman with like half the people going to that school were people who didn't know me, he said that I like stole his bike or like wouldn't give his bike back or something like that. Like just like crazy stuff. But it got so bad because the whole football team got in on it. So like all the way up to seniors, and they would yell at me in the hallways. And I'm adopted. And one of the things that they said was, you were adopted because your mom didn't want you. Your mom should have had an abortion, like all this crazy stuff. Yeah. So that was my first experience of people thinking negatively about me. And also, it wasn't true. So back then, my focus was very much on, I need to correct this. Like, I can't have people thinking things about me that aren't true, which did not help because I was just like, that's not true, and just like crying and
Yeah.
little like 14-year-old. But I'm like, now all these people also in my grade, they didn't like me already before they even got a chance to know me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember, yeah, just being like, they need to understand, like, that's not true. And like, I need to set the record straight. And that totally followed me for the rest of my time there. So I never became friends with anyone from that town. The rest of,
Damn.
yeah. So the people who stayed friends with, like, who were my friends were people who were from my town. So weird. But anyway, so I wrote this paper when I was in high school. I was actually looking at it a few years ago because my friend had a trunk of all like my old stuff from when I was younger. And it was this paper about self-esteem. And I was like, oh, I always thought that I was a confident person and I always had such high self-esteem. And that it's true. Like I've always been this really confident person and people have always liked me. I was always popular when I was younger, but I was all like kind, and just felt really good about myself. And in this paper, I was like, but I realized now that I didn't have self-esteem. I had other esteem. All of
Ooh.
my self-esteem was based on other people and how they see me. And what I had to learn from this is that other people are going to think things about you that aren't true. And,
Mhm.
I tried to correct that and thought that's what I needed to do. But that actually made things worse because then it's like, look at her. She's crazy. She's crying. She's whatever. And gosh, as I'm talking about this, like so many things are coming back to me. Like I was sitting in the cafeteria. This is in the beginning of my freshman year when all this was going on. And one of the football players, who was like a senior, so he's like a big guy, came and picked up the seat with me in it and then let go of the chair so that I like fell to the ground and got hurt. And it was in front of, yeah. So it was bad.
Okay, can we all just take a pause for a second? Bullies fucking suck.
Yeah.
And if you are a parent to children or have influence over children in your life, please inform them. Please instill in the deepest, darkest of their soul not to be a bully. Because I say this is dumb, but this is dumb because it's so preventable with good values.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. Like, it's so not cool.
Yeah,
That's
and I think
my.
it was one of those things where it was like, I don't know, it was seen as cool if you're on the football team and you're a guy to be like, yeah, like we own the school. We're the cool kids.
Which is what's the problem.
Yeah,
Like,
no, no, no,
that's a whole,
totally.
yeah, that's a
Which is
massive.
it, and that's ego-centered.
Mm-hmm.
No, not self-centered. So anyway, so as I was thinking about my evolution of learning and maturing and evolving around this topic, that was my first experience. And you were talking earlier about how you people pleasing, you think of it as trying to prevent the smear campaign. And after that experience that I had, I should say, because I don't think that this learning generalized to my family, but that was like a different level of relationship. I think like I
Right.
have stakes, but with everyone else, with friends or acquaintances or people socially, I was very much just like, people are going to think what they want to think about me, whatever. So I learned that very early. Probably took until I was like 15 to figure that out. But that's also, I've said that I knew I wanted to be a therapist since I was 14, and that's why. Because I went to therapy because of that experience. And it helped me so much that I was like, wow, that was really cool. Like, I thought my life was over. When you're in high school, and especially you're literally the new young freshman, you want to be cool. And I think I'm an extrovert. That's a thing that I'm realizing now. I've thought I was an introvert for a long time, but I'm an extrovert. I was just burnt out before. So now living a life that's more self-centered, it's been really nice. So I love people. And so it was just felt like my life was over. But then going to therapy and realizing my life isn't over. And actually, I'm a lot more powerful not caring about what people think about me, not caring or trying to control the narrative. Like, let the narrative be false. There was something that I do think it is helpful to kind of be like, yeah, people can think whatever they want to think. And if you do just assume something negative about me or you hear gossip about me and then you just believe it without being like, oh, let me take that with a grain of salt. Then okay, like you can just believe that. I don't want people like that in my life anyway.
Yes. That's the mature realization
Hmm.
of smear campaigns and of wondering what people think about you is ultimately you can't control it.
Hmm.
Even if I think I've talked about my professor from college. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Maybe I told someone about that recently. But
Oh, like your truth is between your ears.
yeah, that guy. So he had a lot, he was very out there, but he also had a lot of really good wisdom. And the truth between your ears was one of them. The second thing that he instilled pretty strongly is even if you can change the narrative, you can't change the belief. So you could put the perfect narrative out into the world of exactly what you want people to think or see or know about you, but that's not going to change what they believe. They still get to make that choice themselves.
People are free
And
now.
yeah, exactly. And as soon as we realize that, we realize that we don't have control over other people's thoughts. You only have control over yourself. And so then you have to flip the script of, okay, it's time for me to live for myself and what I believe is true about myself, not living to please what other people think is true about me.
Yeah, and I think it's actually really liberating to be like, I don't have control over that. Because
Yeah.
like, what do I have control over? I'll
Yeah.
focus on that instead, which is
Yeah.
liking myself.
Definitely.
Yeah, one of the other things that I definitely learned since then, not from that experience, but more recent experiences, is like, I lost it. I am
I
more
don't
together today than usual, but it went away.
I don't know if editing this,
Fine.
but oh, it's yours. I hope you keep that.
Okay,
Because that's us being human.
that's true. That's true. As I'm listening to it, I'm gonna remember what it is, though.
Of course.
Oh, I hate when that happens. But anyway, I kind of want to leave some space for you to share your experience as well. I have so many other ones, like as part of my evolution, but I want to make sure.
So I can share mine. So mine is kind of a big one. It's kind of a big story,
Hmm.
so to speak. So I've talked about my divorce. My divorce was rough towards the end because I didn't talk about why I got divorced initially, because I didn't want to isolate my ex-husband. While there were abuses that were happening in my relationship, I knew that he was a broken person and I knew that he needed a support network. So I was like, I'm not going to, say what has happened here and like why I'm truly leaving this relationship, because he needs support more than anything else. And for me to go on a smear campaign of saying like, oh yeah, this is what you did and that is what you did.
Well,
And,
that's
and
not a smear campaign, though. Just
yeah, that's true. It
share.
was all true things.
So, yeah, it's to just share the context of why you got divorced and
Right.
accurately.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I didn't want to isolate him because my
Right.
perception.
Then other people might turn against him.
Yeah, exactly. He was in therapy at least for that. So I was like, okay, I know he has some resources. And there were a couple people that were close to us that had some idea of things that were going on. But ultimately, I was like, I'm not going to talk about this because I was also scared of him. I mean, that was another part of it is like, okay, if I reveal what was going on, like, I mean, he did actively make threats that he was going to come find me and bring his buddies. And that's a whole other thing. But yeah. Yeah, I know he's kind of fucked up in the head a little bit. I feel bad for him for that. But anywho, we got divorced, we separated, we both moved on with our lives. And again, I didn't talk about what had happened. And so I didn't really know what he had said either. And I kind of got the impression over time because some of our joint friendships, like people that we had as friends in the relationship, randomly removed themselves from my life or, unfollowed, unfriended, stopped talking. Like it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, okay. What I thought was a friendship that, was going to withstand this divorce and even had been communicated. Oh yeah, it's so great that we can still, hang out and whatnot, even amidst like you guys separating. I think that's okay, yada yada. Then they just like ghosted me in life. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. All right, fine. Well, I have my own things to figure out. So I'm just going to do my thing. Fast forward a few years and I'm dating and did online dating. And I come across this individual, the person who I'm dating now, who's fabulous. Love him. And he comes into the story as well as to great responses to these sorts of things. He incidentally worked at the same command
Hmm.
as my ex-husband. And initially, I mean, I had already gotten to the point in life where I was like, okay, I have a feeling my ex said some shitty things. I don't know what he said, but I'm just not willing to interact with people who have had close interactions with him. So, I had prefaced that to him like, well, if you know this person, we can't. I'm not even going there. So, long story short, he did know of that person, but he didn't know him. But his best friend, my partner's best friend, was my ex's best friend
Mm.
and roommate.
Mm-hmm.
Awkward. The smear campaign comes in when that friend realized that Billy and I were dating.
Yeah.
His immediate response was, "Oh shit, wait, you're dating her? Ooh, I got some things I need to tell you, what a whore that she was, and yada yada, and all the things that she did." And that, like, I mean, immediately confirmed everything that I was fearful of my ex having said, because he needed context for why we were getting divorced. And I'm like, well, that's not the context, but he needed something to play himself the victim, right?
Yeah.
Of course, when this comes up, I'm like, fuck, that's not at all what happened. Fortunately, Billy and I were far enough along in our relationship that I had prefaced and explained a lot of things that had happened through our marriage. And Billy was so supportive and understanding. And when that situation came up with the friend, Billy's great. He just immediately stepped in and is like, listen, dude, I actually don't care what you have to say because I know the person that's in front of me. So you can just shut your mouth. I don't want to hear any of it. I don't want you to continue talking about this. You don't have space for that. I know who I'm with. And that's the comparison that, one, you can have the people who immediately believe what's ever said
Yeah.
and then attribute that to their character.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can have the person that says, well, let me look at this person that I know, the person in front of me, and make a decision and
Yep.
see, does this information that I'm being given, does that seem consistent with
Mm-hmm.
the behaviors and the type of person that I'm observing before me?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's essentially what Billy did. And he was like, well, I know the person in front of me. I don't need to listen to what this person is saying, versus the friend. Well, I don't know that person very well. So I'm just going to accept whatever these other people tell me, and it's going to inform my beliefs about
Yeah.
them.
And then pass that on as if it's objective fact.
Yeah, when it's
I could
not.
see if it were a healthier scenario or more mature, I could see that guy being like, hey, there are things that I've heard about her that I don't know if they're true or not, but if you want to hear it just so you can consider it,
Yeah.
I can share that with you. Cause I think it can be okay to be like, hey, I've heard this, so maybe be cautious,
Yeah.
It's not how it was framed.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. And that just kind of reaffirmed a lot of the things when I started sharing my truth, because I eventually got to a point where I was like, all right, fuck this. I can't protect this guy anymore. And I need to work through things that I've been dealing with from the fallout of this relationship.
Yeah.
When I started sharing my truth, that was the split. It was people who were like, oh, well, this actually doesn't sit well with me because I don't feel good about knowing these things about this person. Like I had this perception of this person, and now you're presenting something that was totally not what I thought it was. So they removed themselves.
Yeah.
That's fine. You're allowed to do that. Then you have the group of people that are like, okay, well, she's a liar. She must be a whore. She must be this. She must be that. And perpetuating the false information.
Mhm.
And then you have people who are like, oh shit, I'm sorry. I see you.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I wish we would have realized, in that moment. And then they go back and they put the dots together and they're like, ooh, yeah, I see that now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember for me, it was like for the first couple years, that fear of what people were thinking really guided a lot of my decisions.
Hmm.
Like it was, and I mean, there was a level of risk and a level of threat that, was behind that as well, that think was somewhat legitimate. But it pigeonholed me into what I was willing to talk about in my life. And like, I really felt like I had to cater to dancing and, walking on my tiptoes in terms of who I was willing to live out my life as, like how I was willing to let my light shine,
Mm.
because I
Give us
was
an
fearful.
example of that.
I'm pretty active on social media, and a lot of my platform is more of a holistic health. Yes, fitness is a big part of that, but also like being able to work through the things that, we're dealing with internally and how that impacts our greater life. And so I do share, experiences about that, considering how life impacts you. And so that is part of my platform of things that I talk about. And I remember when I was going through that, I didn't feel like I could talk about any of my life because, one, the things that were true, I was withholding because I didn't want to create, negative experiences for my ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
Then the things that I was withholding, now they contradicted with the experiences that he had already shared
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that were not true. So then I look like a liar,
Mm.
or it felt like I looked like a liar.
What were the things that you maybe would have posted on social media that you didn't?
Oh my gosh, the entire journey of overcoming divorce. I wish I would have talked more about that. That actually makes me a little emotional. I wish I would have talked more about how dark that was. Because, like, I've seen people that, I love and I care about that have gone through really fucked up times and really fucked up times in relationships. And I remember when I was going through it, I felt really alone in it.
Yeah.
And my biggest part of my platform is like helping people not feel alone in that, like
Yeah.
normalizing that shit happens.
Yeah.
And it's okay to speak your truth, and it's okay to, to be raw and real and human
Mm.
about it. Because if you're not willing to approach yourself as a human and like all of the yucky, mucky shit and all the good shit together, you're kind of just living a dissociated life. And I don't think you'll ever really work through it. Which is the same, perspective that I end up having about fitness. Is like you can't just work out physically so much that you're disconnecting from what's happening internally. Because I mean, I went through a period of that as well, of like, okay, well, if I just work out harder, if I just, dissociate more physically, then I can get away from my body, get away from my experiences and try to escape this. But it doesn't ever go away.
Mhm.
And so I think that's a big part of what I would have shared, because I do feel like if you were to go back and you were to look at my kind of arc of life, at least as depicted by the content that I share, it goes from the positive experiences that I had growing as a woman married, then a very big empty hole,
Mm.
then a very small part of my life that was like just fitness, like
Right.
just fitness, and not even, addressing the bigger things that I think are so valuable in your fitness journey, which comes, from the core of the human. And then now starting to get into, again, more of the holistic, deeper parts of it. And so if you're looking at this, you're looking on one side of me as one person, and then you miss the entire growth arc.
Yeah.
You miss the entire transformation of how I went from this person over here to who I am now. And that's what I feel. I feel like so many people go through those transitions in life without the guidance and support.
Yes.
And not
Yeah.
that I can be everyone's guidance and support, but I do believe that part of what gives me purpose in difficult experiences is knowing that someone else might benefit from what I grew out of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And not sharing that and not being willing to talk about the hard things, it also perpetuates in my mind the stigma that, okay, well, you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
If you are someone dealing with domestic violence or an abusive home, oh, well, you just have to keep that to yourself. And that's not true. Like
Mhm.
that's the opposite of what I want. And the shitty part was I did keep it to myself.
Yeah.
So it just reinforced it.
Yeah, yeah, that's shame, right? It's shame.
Yes.
It's like, and so you're perpetuating shame. Not that we're blaming you, but I guess a better way to say it would be that you being able to share this now and share the growth arc, people can relate to your story and then they don't feel so much shame because
Yeah.
shame is a social emotion. It's really, I mean, shame says there's something wrong with me at my core, but it's in the context of belonging or not belonging, right? So it's like shame comes from there are all these people who would think that I'm not a good person or
Yeah.
I'm a whore or like whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
I was just thinking of the whore example just because of the smear campaign, but actually for you, it would be more accurate to say that the shame was really about you were probably not a good wife because your
100%.
divorce happened or you weren't really committed to your marriage or, and where I'm from, divorce is a lot more accepted. So there's probably other beliefs that I don't even know about that you were dealing with the shame.
So the difficult part of getting married with a strong religious undertone and a community that was strongly religious is you don't get divorced. You're
Mhm.
not allowed. Like, that's not how that works. The only reason that divorce is sanctioned in terms of the Bible is for a spouse cheating on you.
Right.
And I don't know, you could go
which
down a
you
rabbit.
had, but
Yeah, that's a whole, yeah. And
still,
again, the context
you
of
shouldn't
that
have
is,
had to have that.
yeah, there's a whole bunch of layers to that particular piece of it.
Well,
But
and yeah, and if you were to share that, then it would also be like, oh, well, then you weren't enough for him, or you know what I mean? Like, no matter what, you
yeah.
could be blamed and shamed.
And there's just like, I don't like perpetuating shit talking. It feels like shit talking, whether it's true or not. Um,
Oh, I call it reporting the weather because I'm
ooh,
like, why is it that I can only report the weather when it's a sunny day?
that's so
You
true.
know what I mean? Like,
Ooh,
right now it's storming. It doesn't mean that I'm saying anything bad about the storm, but
yeah.
I'm acknowledging that it's raining and hailing, and that's a context for me in my life right now.
Yeah, that's so that I love that analogy.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to think about that more in terms of what I say and why. So the religious part of it, I will say, when I was considering divorce, and when all of these experiences were happening, my closest network of people, I reached out to four people. Only four people knew what was happening in my life because one, the whole religious undertones is, well, you have to respect your husband. The wife must submit unto the husband and she has to be respectful of him. And that's what the husband wants, is to be respected, and what the wife wants to be loved. And there's some scripture that goes along with that. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but you don't talk shit and you don't air your dirty laundry. That was, the biggest thing. So it's like, okay, well, some shit is happening and the laundry needs to go to the dry cleaner bad. Uh,
Yeah.
so, what do I do with this information? So, I had talked to two of my closest friends who were religious, but also practical. I had talked to my pastor's wife and I had talked to my mom. And I will say, those people, while I didn't give the full, I mean, I didn't tell them like when he sexually assaulted me. I didn't tell them like the years of things that were going on in that. But the things that were difficult in our relationship that were easier to stomach, they said, I'm so sorry you're dealing with that, praying for you, yada, yada. There's not much concrete advice that they could give. At the end of the day, we're like, we know that you're trying and we support whatever it is that you decide. We're just praying for you. When divorce actually was on the table and it was like, okay, well, this is what's happening because all my efforts up until this point and, trying to get him into therapy and that sort of stuff were not working. When divorce went on the table, then his family approached me and they asked, well, we need to understand why you're divorcing him, why you want to leave him. And I explained more of the abuses. And point blank, at the time, my sister-in-law said to me, I'm sorry for what's happened to you, but that's not a good enough reason for divorce. And and I was like, got it. You're
Mhm.
not safe, which
Yep.
sucks. Hindsight 2020, that person has come back and apologized and is like, I don't want to shit talk them, but they have like
You don't want to
reconciled it.
report the weather about that.
Yeah, that see, I'm gonna have to stew on that for a while. But
If
yeah,
you're not
like,
shit talking, if you're shit talking, I'll let you call it that.
oh, thank
If
you.
you saying you're shit talking or doing a smear campaign, I'll just correct it every time, which is fine.
Thank you.
Doing that.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that person did come back later and they had their own experience with divorce and they were
People
like,
are allowed to grow
yeah,
and change.
hindsight being 2020, if I could have done anything differently, it would have been not to get married so young. I mean, well, when we got engaged, I was 20. No, I just turned 21 and my partner was 25. And mind you, there was a whole grooming thing. We started dating when I was 17 and he was 21. So there's a whole nother conversation that goes with
Yeah.
that. But I was so young and there's so much growth and life changes that happen when you're in your 20s.
Hmm.
And had I realized how much I was going to change and evolve as a human, gosh, I wouldn't. Even now, I'm like, I wonder what my evolution of my 30s will be. Like, am I going to be the same person?
I know. Yeah.
And it's like, you're not, you either grow together or you grow apart, and that's okay. But removing the stigma around, okay, well, divorce is not allowed. You're bad if you get divorced. And then the amount of conversations in the religious community that occurred over, well, you're in sin if you're having sex before marriage or if you're living together with someone. So then it's like, okay, even now as an adult, I'm like, well, I'm living with my partner and we're not married. And yeah, we've had sex. So it's like, well, am I a heathen now? Like, and there is so much shame around those conversations,
Mhm.
at least in the area of life that I was in, there was so much shame. While the very small community of people that I had reached out to was like, well, yeah, you should really try to work on this. And, we're really hoping for the best. But like they're hearing the day to day and they're like, okay, yeah, that really sucks. And like, okay, yeah, I kind of get that. Those close people, yeah, they understood. But also from those people, the only two that I've maintained contact with is my mom and one of those friends. And even that one friend, we don't talk regularly anymore. And it's not anything to do with that situation. That's just how life went for us. But it kind of sucks that those people aren't as close to me anymore, partially because of change in life values. But a lot of that did happen when I got divorced. And whether that was specifically because of the ending of that relationship or if it was other things, just changes in who we are as people, I'm not certain. But I know a lot of people that I felt would have become closer in my life or like I could have reached out to. I don't really have them anymore. Or they just outright, left my life, which they're entitled to do. That's fine. I just, it hurts. It's still painful when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like when you're saying that they're hearing what was happening and saying, oh, yeah, that makes sense. It almost sounds like you're getting permission somehow, like, or
It's,
approval.
yeah, it's hard because in the religious community that I affiliated myself with, you could acknowledge that things were really hard, but you just had to pray through it. And you just had to kind of stick it out and hope for a miracle from God. And that was kind of the expectation, is what it felt like. I mean, if you were going into any sermon, the preacher on Sunday is not going to say, oh, yeah, you need to divorce your husband. It's, you need to ask God for a miracle and come to the altar and wash that sin away. Like
Yeah.
that's the vibes. I know. It gives me cringe thinking about it now because it's not practical.
Well,
That
and I also, this is just my own personal belief, but God, whoever that is, God, universe, whatever. If God is a loving God, I don't think that God wants people to be like, oh, I'm just going to pray to you instead of being empowered to make changes in my life that take care of me.
Yes, and that is my biggest qualm with religious dialogue
Well,
is
the
it takes.
religious dialogue you've experienced, because I
Yes,
will say
exactly.
I have friends in the Northeast who are Christian, and it's literally what would Jesus do, which is like very loving and good.
Yes.
So
Well, so
to
where
clarify.
yeah, no, definitely. With that dialogue that I experienced, my problem is that it removes personal responsibility.
Yeah. Or personal protection.
Yes. And I do believe like we were given free will, and the scripture talks about that as well. We were given free will. It's on us to take action.
Hmm.
And so in anything in life, if I'm still, identifying with some of those religious beliefs, it's my responsibility to take action and do the best that I can in the situation that I have. And if it no longer serves me, again, I'm not a tree. I can get up and move. I'm not stuck.
Hmm.
So I have to be willing to take action. It's not just me sitting back and saying, okay, there was that. Oh, what's that analogy? Every so often, usually when a hurricane happens, I see a meme come up for this, but it's like a guy is stranded on top of his house and there's massive floodwaters and everything. And he's praying, God, give me a miracle, save me from, these
Yeah.
floodwaters. And then, a guy comes by in a canoe and he's like, hey man, you need help. And he's like, oh no, I'm waiting for God. And then a guy comes
Yeah.
by with a speedboat and he's like, hey man, do you need rescuing? I'm here to help you. And he's like, oh no, I'm waiting for God. And then a guy comes by with a fucking like helicopter or something and
Yeah.
lands on the house, like, hey, we're here to help you. And he's like, oh no, I'm waiting for God. And it's like, if you're so married to what the outcome looks like,
Yeah.
this could be applicable to more than just this particular example, but to all things.
Yeah.
If you're so married to the outcome that you can't be open to potential solutions,
Hmm.
you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you're gonna
You're
you're
so focused on the way one specific solution will look that you'll let the other ones pass you by, and then
you're stuck.
now you got a house canoe.
Yes. You're going down with the house at that point.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Whew. So, what is it like for you now talking about it on this podcast? Because that's the opposite of your initial fear of
Yeah.
reporting the weather.
Yeah. So because I knew this was the example that I was going to share when we were talking about
Hmm.
what this week's episode was going to be. And I actually pondered this a lot in terms of, oh, how am I going to feel about this? on the one hand, I know it's the right thing to talk about because, again, it aligns with, hey, you're not alone. These things do happen and you have to speak your truth. And no one can take that away from you unless you let them by
Mhm.
not being forthcoming and honest about what your experiences are and where you stand. So I knew it was the right thing to talk about. And I also went back and forth in my head of like, okay, but how do I talk about this without just shitting on this experience and this situation? And again, making it a smear campaign in my mind, right? And so there was that layer and back and forth. I had to process through it a few times to figure out, okay, well, what is the right context and the right information to share here, which I do think is reasonable. Yeah. I feel aligned with it. There is initial, like, I wouldn't even say actually no, because I don't get the feeling in my body of like anxiousness or nervousness about it
Good.
anymore, which is great. Yeah. I just think about like, oh man, I wish, me of 4 years ago felt the same,
Sending
you
her
know?
so much love. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is why that made me so emotional, is like just putting myself back in that position. It's like, oh man, yeah, she was really scared.
Yeah, for sure. And she was alone. She
Yeah.
was alone in that, and now you're not.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, it feels right to speak up about the things that need to be spoken up about. And I'm not stressed about people's perceptions of me anymore. Like when that thing happened, I knew because Billy was really good friends with my ex's friend. When that was all going down, there was like some nervousness about how their interactions would be.
Yeah.
And we even had him over at our house, somewhat recently within the last few months for a barbecue. And there was some anxiety there about like, oh, I wonder what he thinks about me. And then I was like, actually, who gives a fuck? Like, and if he thinks negatively about me and he causes my partner to think negatively about me because of his beliefs, this is not my partner then.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And it's a filter, which I feel good about because I'm like, yeah, I know my truth. I know my experience. There's no way in hell I'm going back to that life, to that like feeling of life. So it's okay if that eliminates people from my life because they weren't meant to be there in the first place. And that's kind of where I got to as well when I was coming out of my divorce and going through my healing period, and people were kind of felt like people were dropping like flies. Initially it was really nerve-wracking and like really painful. And then I was kind of excited because I was like, oh, good. Because, oh, that was one of the things. Oh. I forgot about that. Because my ex did approach me at one point, like 6 months after we separated. When I had, started moving on, he was like, oh, well, people are telling me these things. And I just want you to know it's not my family. Other people are telling me this stuff because I had blocked him on all of my accounts and whatnot. First off, the stuff that they were telling him, like, it wasn't. I was like at a barbecue with friends. Like, I mean, like, there's not much there. I know, but everyone's making it to be a big thing. I'm like, oh wow, I'm allowed to have a life and allowed to like make new roots and new connections. Go figure.
Um,
I know, but I remember him making a big deal about that. And there was that anxiety of, oh, well, people are watching my shit to report back to him
yeah.
and share stuff with him. Like I've intentionally blocked him for a reason because he's a harmful person in my life.
Yeah.
There's a reason I don't want. And so then I was like, you know what? Maybe we could just piss off these people enough that they'll leave on their own accord. Like, and then I won't have like it felt like a good filter for those people to leave. Cause then I was like, great, I don't have to feel like I'm watching my back for the next thing that you're gonna say about me.
Yeah. And also, you sharing, reporting the weather now on this podcast. If there are people listening to this who know or knew your ex, they get to decide how they interpret that. And one of the things that I have learned through all my experiences on this topic is that I feel more evolved in the way that I think about people who are shitty. Ram Dass says we're all just walking each other home. We're all evolving. We're all on this path. And just because someone is in an earlier part of this path and they're less mature than I am or less evolved than I am, I don't necessarily think that they're a bad person. I just really hope that they can keep evolving, not only for other people not being harmed, but also for them.
Yeah.
And so, people listening to this can be like, oh, that guy is an awful person and he's an abuser. And they can have it be this black and white label that strips your ex of all his humanity,
Which
and
I don't want.
which is
But
not true. That's not
yeah,
true about really anyone.
correct.
Or they can be like, wow, well, I don't know who that guy is, but, I hope that he has worked through whatever demons he has inside of him or
Yeah.
whatever cognitive struggles or whatever it is that led to that. And I'm so glad that Katie's in a better place. It's like we can wish the best for everyone, even
Yeah.
people who do harm, while we protect ourselves from the people who do harm with boundaries.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you feel good about it.
Yeah.
That's
It's a filter, and I'm glad for the filter.
right. The filter is good.
So you had mentioned that you have an example in terms of your more evolved. How does
I
it
have a
impact you
lot of.
now? I know you have a lot.
Okay, so my example from high school, that experience, my ex knew that the shit he was saying wasn't true.
Mhm.
Like he knew that. That was less psychologically confusing because I'm like, yeah, this guy's just an asshole and he's ruining my reputation. With my family, they believed all the things that they were saying about me. They very much believed that they were a victim of my boundaries and that I didn't care about them and that I was selfish. They believed all that. And, there are reasons that go into that. I think for some of them, their self esteem wasn't very good and there's insecurities that get triggered. And so they interpreted my boundaries as being against them and meaning something negative about them. And so that triggered their insecurities and their deepest fears. So the smear campaign was not an intentional smear campaign. By the way, I keep getting so distracted by this. Maybe it's because I was raised Jewish, but I keep wanting to say schmear campaign, like a bagel and a schmear.
Yeah, that makes me hungry. Makes me really want a bagel.
Okay, a smear campaign. So they didn't know that that's what they were doing because psychologically, I guess you could say it's like playing the victim, but it wasn't like a role that they were choosing to play. So it's not really playing the victim, it's just identifying as the victim. There's this victim mindset and then experiencing me as the persecutor, which is part of what made it so hard for me when they were thinking negative things about me and telling other people in my family, and other people in my family were just believing them. And then I'm getting calls saying you're ruining the family, you're tearing it apart. I'm going to make one of my grandparents die earlier because of the stress that it's causing them. So I think it was kind of the same thing that happened in high school that I had kind of gotten over with friends or acquaintances, but because this was my family, it just felt more important for them to be able to see me for who I really am and to not misunderstand me, especially negatively. And I remember trying to explain to them, I want to have all of my family in my life. I still want that, but I know I can't have that. And they just couldn't understand it. I always had this idea of an abuser as someone who's deliberately trying to hurt someone, but that's not what happened for me with certain people in my family. And it took me a really long time to even use the word abuse. And I love them, but I can't have a relationship with them. And that's hard for me too. But they couldn't understand that. They were just like, well, but it's your family. So I think it was extra hard for me to have them all perceive me a certain way because they truly did. It wasn't because they were trying to be mean or anything. So from that, I really realized, and also I was young. I was in my mid 20s, I'm pretty sure. And these were the quote unquote adults in my family. And so I still feel like the kid in this situation at the time. I valued their opinion and I'm like, okay, they don't really understand. And it's kind of like when kids have perspectives or opinions about the world and then the parents are like, well, just wait till you get older. An example I have is like adults would complain about paying taxes and I'm like, oh, that's okay. And they're like, well, when you get older, you'll understand. Well, now I'm older. And does it suck that I pay taxes? Yeah. But I also understand it. Maybe I wish that taxes went somewhere different, but I understand the purpose of taxes. And so it was one of those things. It sowed a lot of doubt in me. I wondered, am I just sensitive? Is that why my life doesn't feel sustainable anymore? And then I finally realized some of these people I was dealing with, their judgment is bad. They're limited in their maturity. And I didn't know that at the time because I hadn't matured yet. But getting better, going to therapy, figuring all of this out really helped me. And I realized how delusional people can be and how avoidant people are of discomfort. emotional discomfort and difficult truths and sitting with that. So that has really helped me now because I understand that setting boundaries is like stepping into your power. And a lot of people get triggered by that. And that's
Yes.
their stuff and their work and their judgment. One of the other things that I learned is that I was trapped in this, it's called the drama triangle, where in unhealthy, dysfunctional relationships, you really only have the option of being three different roles. And you can change the roles, but you can never be anything other than those roles. And so the drama triangle, there's 3 points on a triangle. So there's three roles.
Oh, I remember this one. I love this one. Everyone pay attention.
And so there's at the top, so let's say like the point of the triangle is pointing down. So at the top, there's the two sides of the triangle. And so on one side is the perpetrator, on the other side is the rescuer. Those are two roles. And then at the bottom, where there's the point of the triangle pointing down, that's the victim role. And really none of these roles have power, but the perpetrator and the rescuer at least feel like they have a sense of power. Because the perpetrator is power over other people. The rescuer is, I have power in that I have something to give to help or rescue people, and I feel like I'm a good person. And the perpetrator victimizes the victim often by telling the victim that they're the perpetrator, you know? And then the victim, when you're in the victim role, one of the reasons, and I can totally identify with this, when all this abuse escalated and the smear campaign was happening with my family, I was very much in the victim role and the victim mindset because I was just trying to get them to see like I'm the victim. And also I truly was a victim, right?
Yeah.
But I also wanted them to know I'm the victim because it was like she's the perpetrator, I'm the victim, like see this accurately. I don't have power. And then I
Yeah.
was so terrified to have power by being assertive and protecting myself with boundaries and standing up for myself, because then I would be seen as the perpetrator. And ultimately, what I realized is the way to freedom when you're trapped in this drama triangle is to be seen as the perpetrator. Because asserting yourself and standing in your power, you will be seen as the perpetrator.
Hmm.
You're not being the victim anymore. You're not being the rescuer or enabling. You're taking things into your own hands and making your own decisions. So that's one of the big things that I learned from that. That really helps me be okay with being seen that way. And I think it has made me, how would I describe it? I guess I just feel so confident.
Yeah. I think the drama triangle really, when you first told me about that, and that wasn't on an episode of the podcast, that was in one of our conversations,
Yeah.
like somewhat recently. That blew my mind because as someone, because I played in my triangle relationship situation, I played the rescuer a lot.
Yeah.
And then I realized I was the victim.
Yeah.
And then I had an intense fear of becoming the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And so then you're dealing with that. And even like in your example, you're dealing with two sides of offenses at that point. Is like, one, you're trying to mitigate the perpetrator,
Hmm.
and you're also trying to defend yourself against everyone who has the triangle flipped. And so,
Hmm.
like, you're fighting two battles. So then it feels like you really can't win.
Hmm.
But it is true that, like, you have to become the thing that you fear. Not intentionally, not like in a harmful way, but for the sake of you have to be assertive and you have to be okay
Yeah.
with accepting people's perceptions
Yeah.
that you will be at fault.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think about myself too. And that was the same thing is like I felt trapped in like my ex had a hand over me, even years after our divorce, until I was willing to stand up and say, this is what happened
Hmm.
and assert that, oh no, it's never happening again. Going into contact with him, being forthcoming about like what happened in our relationship and like being okay with the fallout of everyone else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is like you have to exactly like to get out of that triangle, you have to scoot up into that corner where it's like, oh no, you might be the bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I'm a bad guy because I will not allow myself to be abused, And then I'm a fucking bad guy.
Yes.
Let me be bad. I'm a criminal. I'm going to hell. Like, it's just so, it's liberating. And
Yeah.
also, I think it connects to another thing that I learned from all of this, which is what I believe about me matters more than what other people believe about me. And instead of asking myself, do my behaviors align with other people's values or other people's narratives? Like, do my behaviors align with my own values and priorities?
Yes. Say that louder.
So, the other thing too is that I felt like I had to defend myself. So Jade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Justify, argue, defend, explain. So I thought I needed to, well, I mean, there was pressure for me to defend myself because, yeah. One of the reasons that was so hard is one, because I thought I actually needed to do that. And especially abuse that is from your parent. It's not like my brain developed outside of abuse and then I got abused.
Yeah.
Like that was you know what I mean? So it's a little bit like,
Yeah. Well, there's a power dynamic there.
yeah, and I don't have a baseline or anything to compare it to explain anything.
Yeah.
And also, I was cognitively impaired. I was severely depressed as an outcome of that. And that causes legitimate impact to the brain. And I was just so confused. And I was just like, it almost felt like, how do I stand up for myself and set and maintain these boundaries? Not only because people are going to think I'm bad and that I'm the perpetrator, but I also can't even explain it. Like, I literally am so confused in my head and they're all asking me, like, give me examples of this or give me examples of that. When it's psychological or emotional abuse, verbal abuse, it's really hard to get people to understand. Like, I remember there was one person in my family who told me, just let it roll off your back. Whatever this person says, just let it roll off your back. And I was like, you don't understand. This person literally will not stop talking about this. Like, literally, I cannot interact with them without them bringing this up. And I can't talk to them until they get the answer that they want because they literally won't stop talking about this. So it was just really hard for me. And this is something for the selfies. We did talk about this last week in the boundaries episode, but just know you don't have to give a reason when you set a boundary. You can keep it really general. And I didn't know that at the time because at the time I thought that I had to get them to understand. And I'm going to be seen as the perpetrator, the persecutor, if they don't understand, because I need to make sure that they see me as good and that this isn't against them. Even if I found out, oh, they've been going to therapy now and they're a different person and we actually could have a healthy relationship. Unfortunately, I'll never know because I can't, the amount of harm that they could cause me is too great for me to give that a chance again. I've given it hundreds of chances. And at this point, it's about protecting literally like my brain functioning, like I can't keep doing it. But anyway.
Hold on. I do want to pause on that. For anyone going through that experience, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
this was something that I had to grow through. You can forgive, but that doesn't mean you have to reconcile.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can accept that shit happened. You can feel empathy and sadness, and you can mourn the loss of something. And even when it presents itself an opportunity to come back, you don't have to take it if
Mm-hmm.
you know that there's a potential it could cause you harm or if you're scared of it causing you harm. Like
Yeah.
you're allowed to make that choice, and that's totally valid.
Yeah. 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 I didn't know that. But now I do.
Yeah.
Also realizing how delusional, aka out of touch with reality, people can be. So this was in 2016 was when I started setting boundaries and everything was really rough. And politics started getting pretty bad then. And right now things are rough. So I think there's also a level of grief, and kind of darkness almost. And also being a therapist, I just see so many of the people who come to me have people in their lives who are not in touch with reality and making the client the perpetrator or whatever. And that's really sad. But the positive that I've come to, though, is that for any of you who can relate to that, by putting yourself first and you actually recognizing reality and you reporting the weather and not protecting other people from the truth or the consequences of the truth. And also, hopefully, us having this podcast and us saying, hey, we don't actually have to shame people when they do bad things. Like, we don't have to be like, oh, yeah, they're abusive. They're an awful, bad person. They did bad things, and we can protect ourselves from that while also hoping for the best for them and hoping that they grow. This is how we create a world and support other people to develop and mature into people who can sit with reality. Because if acknowledging the reality that I've made mistakes or someone else has made mistakes and done things that were bad, if acknowledging and sitting with that reality, admitting that to yourself means you're an awful person, then we're all going to be invested in not sitting with reality. And what
Yeah.
we need in order to get better, not only as us individually, but us as a society, as everyone on planet Earth, we all need to be able to sit with the truth and then work through it. And then say, hey, here are the things that I can't change. What are the things that I can change? I'm going to work on those things. And I'm always going to treat people with dignity and kindness, regardless of how they treat me. Does that mean I don't set boundaries? No, right? I've set boundaries with them, but I've never said you're an awful person. I've literally never said that. In fact, I've often set boundaries in an email so it can be in writing so they can reread it when they're in more grounded or more secure mental places so it can be interpreted more accurately and hopefully not according to their insecurities and their biggest fears. And maybe they'll be able to see, I think they're a good person. It's just the behavior that I have an issue with. I think that because of XYZ experiences that they've had, their self-concept was impacted negatively, and that led to lacking self-awareness, lacking emotional maturity, these relationship skills, and it's led to harming me inadvertently, but still that behavior of harm has happened. So putting these boundaries in email for me was like, okay, I'm hoping I'm just planting all these seeds so that if they can reflect and get better, they will. And selfies, I want you to know it's not your responsibility to plant seeds if you don't want to do that. I just personally do that because I just want all of us to be able to grow and evolve. And it's okay for us to do things that are, hold on, I got to take this from my dog because otherwise people need to go out for a long time. I'm like, okay. I think I'm beating a dead horse here, but yeah, I'm just going to give one other example, a little more things I've learned, and then we can talk about our current event.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So I did want to talk a little bit about social media. One of the things, and this is actually similar to what I was just saying, one of the things that I got almost canceled for on social media, almost got canceled on social media. I think I just wasn't big enough to actually get canceled. But this was in 2020. And similar to what I was just talking about, one of the things that I was posting on social media, not on my personal account, but on my, I think it was my therapy practice account, which I don't have anymore. But one of the things that I was posting was because, you know, we have all this conversation about narcissism in our culture right now, which is great for us to be talking about that. But I think that we're using it to dehumanize people, and I'm not into that.
Yes.
Because for me, it's like, okay, so people who have actually diagnosed narcissism or just narcissistic traits and are harmful and are abusive or whatever, yes, they harmed you and you need to protect yourself against them. But we also need to support them to not individually support them to get better. Like, I'm not saying that a victim needs to like rescue that person and help them, but that culturally, we need to stop dehumanizing people who have narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder and instead talk about it like, okay, this person, I'm noticing these traits. And so, yes, I need to protect myself against these behaviors, but I hope that they can get help. I hope that they can improve. And I'm still going to see them as a human who has things to work on. There's a reason that people are narcissistic. It's a psychological protection against shame. And
Mm.
so, how do you think that someone So if someone has narcissistic traits or a full-blown disorder, right? It's on a spectrum. When it's a full-blown disorder, that means that there's more shame. And that more shame means that there needs to be more protection, aka narcissism, against that shame. And then what we're going to do culturally is shame them. No, that's not helping. That's just going to create more narcissism. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, the reason that I almost got canceled is because people were like, I was a victim of, someone with narcissism, and, we shouldn't be humanizing them. They're awful and da 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 da. And I was like, yeah, you should protect yourself from that. But just like throwing a whole person out, it just doesn't feel good to me. And I also, at that time, was working with a lot of people with personality disorders at a clinic. And there were a few people who I identified had narcissism, and I worked with them on it. And because the way that I approached it with them was not shaming, was not judgmental, and was basically like, oh, it makes sense you have narcissism based on your experiences. This is the psychological protection that developed, and helping them actually understand this is what's going on. And a lot of those people were so depressed and so empty. They had no meaningful relationships. And that made them feel worse and worse and worse, because then it's like, oh my God, no one actually, I'm not valuable. I don't have close relationships. So then I have to pump my ego up even more. And it's just this sick cycle. But when I explained it to them, we could literally work through it and they could get better. And that's me as a therapist. Do I do that in my personal relationships? No, you have to pay me to do that. I will not.
Yeah.
I will, and so any of you listening, I am not telling you to work with people like this.
So how do I say this? The concept of parts and that multiple things can be true, I
Yeah.
think really applies here.
Love it.
And if we say that all a person with narcissism is a harmful narcissist,
Yes.
and we attribute their identity to that singular thing,
Yeah.
I feel like that also, if you're going to apply that blanket statements are true, that also means that anytime we fucked up as
Right.
humans,
Yes.
that we are bad people,
Yep.
which is not true.
Right.
And it's a double standard.
Yes.
So you have to see, and I say the same thing about my ex. Like, yes, he was an abusive person. He caused abuses to me, but he was a broken person.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of empathy and care for him, even in his broken state, because I do hope he gets better.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be the best news for you?
And that doesn't mean that I have to go back or that I have any relationship whatsoever. I'm just happy that he's not a shit person that way.
Totally. For everyone else, but also for him.
Yeah, exactly. Like his life would be so much better. Everyone's would. And it's true that you can, see a person with faults or with poor choices or poor patterns or hurts.
Mm-hmm.
You can see them that they do harmful things. And you can also see them as someone who wants to not do harmful things, but maybe has their own things that they got to work through. So they don't know how yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like both of those things can exist simultaneously. And usually that's how it happens. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think many people, I think there is like, the psychological, the sociopaths that, end up becoming mass murderers. Like, there are those very rare.
Right. And even them, I hope they get better, but
me too.
Put them in jail because I don't want anybody else getting chopped up.
They need a very controlled environment to get better.
Support you protecting yourself.
But like that extreme, and I think attributing a person with narcissism as only a narcissist is kind of perpetuating the victim mindset in reverse.
Exactly. We have a problem with victim mindset. Yes.
We do. You can acknowledge that bad things happened and that there's something to grow in.
Mm-hmm.
You can also acknowledge that you need to have boundaries and you can no longer interact with that person while acknowledging that they're not a bad person. Like all of those things can be true. Yeah. And it is hard. Like so for the person that was like, oh, well, I was, harmed by a person with narcissism.
You're an abuse apologist and you don't understand. And I'm like, well, I really shared that my history with being abused, but okay.
Yeah, like I'm sad for that person because they are clearly still hurting.
Yeah, me
And
too.
they have like, and that's the awareness is that okay, if someone feels so strongly that way, like clearly you are still
Yes,
really
yes.
offended.
And I recognize that as
Yeah. And so if that's your mind, if that's your mindset that okay, it's black or white, all or nothing, that they are either a completely harmful person with no hope and no good traits within them, or they're an angel,
yeah,
that probably means you also have some work to do.
for sure.
Yeah, maybe explore and look a little deeper as to why you feel that way
Mhm.
and work on those hurts because it's just not true. Like
That's
life
right.
is so much more gray.
So yeah, and a lot of people jumped on that too. And yeah, I think I agree with you. That was one of the things that I thought too was okay, this person is still, and I think again, everything is a process.
Mhm.
So in order to get out and to stand up for yourself, you might have to think this person's a bad person, this person's a monster. You might need to think that, you know? And on some level it's true because some abuses is they are being a monster, you
Yeah.
know? It's almost like when people talk about having demons, it's like the demon took them over, you know? And so I guess I just want to be really clear because I think this is nuanced. I'm not judging anyone who needs to see a narcissist as a bad person, but I guess it's just I want to offer this other way of looking at it when you are psychologically ready in your process to then eventually get to that when you're at that place to be able to talk about that culturally. So I guess what I'm saying is I understand the part of the process that people are in when they need to make that person all bad,
Yeah.
maybe to empower themselves or validate themselves enough to get out and to get themselves protected and to actually sit with and recognize that they were a victim and to really let that sink in and to really sit with that person was a perpetrator. I think that's an important part of the process. And I guess what I'm saying is that's not the end of the process. And
Yeah.
I don't think culturally we're at the end of the process yet because I think the end of the process is like we want everyone to grow and we want to see people not as all good or all bad. We want to be able to see this nuance because that's also what's going to help us sit with reality and sit with complexity. And it's going to stop the reinforcement and the cycle of narcissism and abuse.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Okay. One more thing. I just think this is important, but I promise it's not going to be long. Okay, so this is similar because one of the things that really came up for me when I was being called out on social media as an abuse apologist or a narcissist apologist or whatever, it just makes me think of the woke mob, you know, and that there's these woke Olympics that especially happen on social media. And I want to be a good person. I know everyone listening to this wants to be a good person. And so when people come after you in the way of you're not being moral or you're not being ethical or what you're saying is problematic or harmful, and it's important for you to your values to not be problematic and harmful. One of the things that came up for me is like, okay, so I can't say anything that might be misunderstood. And this reminds me of a situation with a friend of mine who I'm actually still friends with. I'm really glad about that. And what happened was she was really judgmental about me choosing to be with my ex because she did not. So when I was with him, and the way that she came at it was like, you always do this. You always end up in these unhealthy relationships, and now you're doing it again. And just very judgmental and talking down to me. And I didn't know if our friendship was going to be able to withstand that. And honestly, for a few years, we weren't very close, but then we talked 1 or 2 years ago, talked through it. and are in a different place with it. But one of the things that came to me when I was dealing with that situation was the way that she's talking to me, even if what she's saying is true and something that would be helpful for me to consider, the way that she's saying it is she's acting like I'm dumb and she's talking down to me and she's making assumptions. She's not being curious. She's not asking me any questions about the situation or trying to understand my perspective. And I'm not going to take that in.
Yeah.
It's interesting because now looking back, she was right in terms of what she said, in terms of the information or perspective that she gave. But even now looking back on that, it still wasn't helpful to me because it needed to be given to me in a package, in a vehicle, in a way, framed in a way that I could actually understand it. And that would mean that she would have to be curious and she would have to understand my perspective. And if she had done that, then she could have said, "Hey, well, I can actually see, like, here are the things that I understand that you're talking about. Here's the piece where I think you might have a blind spot. And I support whatever you do. However, it's really important for me to show you this blind spot because I want you to make an informed decision."
You literally did that with me.
Oh,
Yeah. You literally did that with me.
with
Yeah. Yeah. That's exact. And when you did it that way, because I remember you would express like, I don't necessarily think this is the best. Like I knew your intentions were, yeah, this ain't the choice for you, but I still love you. And I'm gonna let you work your way through this. But understand I'm here to be a sounding board and I still support your decisions. That carries so much more power than saying, you're wrong.
you're dumb. You're making
Yeah.
a decision. Yeah, you're wrong. Because it's like I could see, now I know what you're talking about. I could see that I mean, you were in a process.
Mhm.
You were in a process of development, of learning, of unlearning. And so, if I want to support you to make the right decision for you, then I need to be with you in the process of the learning and unlearning. And again, that's sitting with you in reality instead of me saying, well, you just need to not be in that process and you just need to be on the other side of it where you know the information that I know.
Right.
You know, and I truly would have supported you either way. If you had made the decision to be with someone who wasn't good for you, to me, my self talk, my way of interpreting that would have been, okay, she needs this to learn from.
Mhm.
And I'm here to keep supporting her. And I want you to get to a place where you're in a good relationship. And yay, you are.
There's a piece to that I think is really important when you're dealing with anyone that you're trying to help through that is assuming good intent. When you're talking with someone that you don't see eye to eye with and they have a different experience or a different interpretation of an experience, assuming good intent and that they have a logical reason for why they believe what they believe
Yeah.
and why they're doing what they're doing does wonders to being able to like reach them and
Yeah.
understand them. Because again,
Again,
just like you're saying,
not
being
black and white,
curious.
nuance,
Yeah.
gray
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I wasn't like, oh, Katie, you're dumb. And I didn't think you were. Because so that was the other thing that I remember thinking with this friend. I was like, well, if she thinks I'm dumb, I don't want to be friends with someone who thinks I'm dumb. I
Yeah.
want to be friends with people who are like, guess what? None of us know everything, and we all are learning different things, or I'm going to know more than friends of mine in one area and they're going to know, it's just like, can we get away from, again, like the black and white? And I guess it's like, then turn that on yourself. When other people are judging you or thinking negatively of you, all this grace that I give to other people, that's my standard for how I treat myself and how other people treat me. So if other people are jumping to conclusions and making assumptions and not assuming good intent or not assuming that I'm smart but have this area that I haven't worked through, then I'm not going to take on their perspective of me. And even in this case, in this example with my friend, even when what she was saying was true, but the thing is, it doesn't matter that it was true because the intent or the purpose or the goal of her sharing that was to protect me. Just the truth or just information isn't what protects you, right?
Mhm.
It's also being able to actually understand it and integrate it. Oh, the other thing too is that we also jump to conclusions about other people. We will all of us are always going to judge everyone. So
Yeah.
I just want you to know that. It's just don't believe everything you think and be curious about your own judgments, right? So
Mhm.
when you make assumptions, it's okay. You're going to do that forever after. Just stop and notice and be curious. Okay, that's it. That's all I got.
Great.
Other than our current event, and then we'll be done.
Yeah. So our current event, so funny. We both thought of the same
Same.
one because it's actually kind of appropriate right now and it's coming to the limelight
Mm-hmm.
is the Blake Lively situation.
Yeah. Do you want to?
I'm going to let you tell us about that.
Okay, I have the New York Times article. They did a good one. Okay, so there was this New York Times article. Yeah, I might not be able to find the date, but a recent New York Times article called, quote, "We Can Bury Anyone," end quote, inside a Hollywood smear machine. Private messages detail an alleged campaign to tarnish Blake Lively after she accused Justin Baldoni of misconduct on the set of It Ends With Us, the movie. So basically, the too long didn't read is that Blake Lively complained that the director of the movie, Justin Baldoni, had repeatedly violated physical boundaries and made sexual and other inappropriate comments to her. And what ends up happening is that this guy, Justin Baldoni, is like, well, I don't want my reputation to be harmed. What if she puts this out? What if she talks about this? So his solution was to discredit her by literally hiring professionals to engage in a smear campaign to ruin her reputation so that she wouldn't be believed. And they talk about burying her. So let me see if I can find. Oh my gosh. Mr. Baldoni, so the Justin Baldoni, was honored at a star-studded event celebrating men who elevate women, combat gender-based violence, and promote gender equality worldwide. What was this event? He received an award for being an ally to women. I wonder if that was coordinated as part of this. So I guess it's called crisis PR. Let's see. I remember do you remember seeing all the negativity about her? Because I do.
So I remember seeing the negativity come through and I was like, this is so weird. I've never
I
assumed
was
any negative experiences with Blake Lively. She
Yeah.
seemed like kind of a gem and quite reasonable.
Yep.
And I was seeing people start talking shit about her and I was like, this
I thought
doesn't
it
make
was
sense to
too.
me.
Yeah. So Justin hired this woman, Melissa Nathan, a crisis PR expert whose clients have included Johnny Depp and Drake. And then there was a PR person for the studio that the movie was produced through named Jennifer, either Abel or Abel. They made this social media plan, which was basically the smear campaign that they were going to implement if they felt that his reputation was vulnerable at all. So they decided to implement this plan. Here are some of the messages that the New York Times found. So these two PR women, there's Jennifer and there's Melissa. And Melissa says, all press is so overwhelming. We've confused people. So much mixed messaging. It's actually really funny if you think about it. So one of them, Jennifer, says, the narrative online is so freaking good and fans are sticking up for Justin. And there literally has been no pickup of these two articles, which is actually shocking to me. But I see this as a total success, as does Justin. You did such amazing work. And then Melissa Nathan, the crisis PR person, says, narrative is crazy good. So did you. The majority of socials are so pro Justin, and I don't even agree with half of them, LOL. Yeah, they talked about literally social manipulation. They're like, that's what we're doing. We're manipulating. We're so good at it. Yeah, and they put stuff out there about Blake Lively being insensitive about domestic violence. And in all of her appearances, she never made reference to domestic violence at all.
So that was funny. That was one of the things that I cued in that I was perplexed on when the advertising for It Ends With Us came out, because it is a movie about domestic violence and
Which
domestic
I
abuse.
didn't know until I was
Correct.
meeting with a client a couple days ago, and she was like, it's such a good movie, and it's about freaking abuse. Like, what?
I know. And so what was trippy to me was I was like, why is Blake Lively not talking about this like a domestic violence film? Because this is important context for people going to see this movie. And I feel like it downplays that, like them not talking about that. Well, apparently, so Justin Baldini, is that his last name?
If
Justin, whatever, he's the
yeah.
director and one of the actors, one of the lead roles, right? And part of his talking points that they all came together and said, these are the promotional points that we want you talking about and the plan that we want you presenting to the public on whatever it is that they, tout up the movie to bring attention to it and get people to go see it. None of it talked about domestic violence, and they wanted it to all remain pretty positive. So Blake Lively was actually following the
Yeah.
script that he had set out alongside the producing and marketing team so that she was in alignment with the expectations of the movie. So she was doing exactly what she was supposed to
Actually
do.
obligated not to talk about it then.
Right, exactly. And then he was the one that deviated from that social marketing plan,
Yeah.
which then supposedly garners him support of like, oh, he's so empathetic. And now he's this guy that's for women and is like an ally for women and all this stuff because he's talking about domestic violence and domestic abuse. And you think that he's being more sensitive to it. But no, it sounds like it was all fucking planned like that from the start to discredit her and make her seem insensitive. And then you bring all these other like smear tactics in and it's like, oh, well, that's not, that's not what we thought.
Oh my gosh, listen to this. Ms. Nathan, so that's the crisis PR person, soon floated proposals to hire contractors to dominate social media through, quote, full social account takedowns, end quote, by starting, quote, threads of theories and generally working to, quote, change narrative. And then she said, all of this will be most importantly untraceable. Oh, here it is. So the studio's PR person said to the crisis PR person, I think you guys need to be tough and show the strength of what you guys can do in these scenarios the scenarios where his reputation might be tarnished. And then it says, he wants to feel like she can be buried. And then the person responds, of course, but when we send over documents, we can't send over the work we will or could do because that could get us in a lot of trouble. We can't write, we will destroy her. So basically, what had happened was this PR crisis firm was hired, and then it was like, okay, give us the outline, what you're going to do. What's your plan? They gave an outline that didn't include certain things they were going to do because it would look so bad, because they were going to destroy her. Then the person representing him came back and said he doesn't feel comfortable with this. He doesn't feel like this is enough or damaging enough to her. And that's when they clarified and said, well, we are going to destroy her. It's just that we can't write that down in an outline for him to see.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's
Wow.
an example of a smear campaign where they obviously know exactly what they're doing because they're getting paid to do it. It's crazy. Yeah.
And I want to take a second and acknowledge like the response. I think with that in mind, like Blake Lively is handling this really well.
Yeah.
Of like, she's not going off on social media or in any channels and shitting on him.
Mm-hmm.
She went very intentionally. She got a lawyer. She created a full detail of this is exactly what happened, when it happened. These are the receipts for everything that happened. And we're basically trying to defend her, what's that word? Reputation.
Yeah.
Through the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's not
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which
she's
is
not
an
playing into
example
it.
of I'm being assertive and I'm protecting myself, but I'm not then trying to smear you.
Yeah, exactly.
She's
And
reporting the weather.
she is reporting the weather.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I get like the social media threads recommendations on my Instagram and Facebook all the time, which drives me nuts. But every so often those pop up. And one of the responses on there was actually really good. You can have let's say the schmear campaign, the bagel schmear. Let's say the smear campaign worked and you now believe this negativity about Blake Lively and you're hearing these allegations come from her about misconduct with Justin, whatever. The best thing that you can do, not just for this situation, but also for anytime a woman or anyone, actually, let's be really clear, anyone is reporting abuse or misconduct, is to say, I know how I feel about this person, and that doesn't mean that they're wrong. Like I can believe, let's say, I could believe that Blake Lively was a shitty person, and the right thing for me to do is to look at the receipts and look at the information pragmatically and then make an informed decision, not just say, oh, well, because I now think negatively of Blake Lively, she must be lying. She must be, trying to ruin Justin's reputation.
Right. Right. And you can also always say, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't have to have all the answers.
Wow. Gosh, these two PR people, another message is socials are really, really ramping up in his favor. She must be furious. It's actually sad because it shows you how people really want to hate on women.
It is sad. I don't understand how these PR people feel comfortable with that because they're also women, right?
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, but I also think sometimes some people have the belief of it's a dog eat dog world.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't think there's an option to be a good person because being a good person would mean that you're a victim.
Yeah.
So that's my guess. I mean, who knows? But my guess would be that, there are women who are like, wow, it's so sad how easy it is for women to be looked down upon. And, this is my job. And so I'm going to take advantage of that fact.
Basically, the only world that exists in their mind is that triangle, the perpetrator, the rescuer.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the
And I
victim.
think that's why people don't know that you can get out of it because that is your only world. It was my only world.
Yeah.
So,
When it comes to being self-centered, you do have to rely on your truth. And people from time to time will say things that are not true about you or that are true about you and cause you to feel some type of way. And that's all valid and that's okay, but don't let it keep you from living out your truth and from being who you are at your core.
yeah. Yeah.
That's the way to feel most aligned.
Yeah. If people are thinking negatively about you and it's not true, you got to stick with your truth. If they're saying something negative about your behavior that you realize, oh, wow, that actually doesn't align with my values, that was a blind spot of mine, then you get to have your process of reflecting and working toward change around that. But you actually don't owe anyone else anything. And you still get to be a good person in the context of having blind spots and, not being right about everything and not doing everything right. That's called being a human. And so part of being self-centered is giving yourself grace and acknowledging forever after that you are a human and you get to be imperfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for today. Wonder how long this one's going to be.
Sorry, guys. We've been getting a lot longer lately. They've been getting in depth.
It just all seems really important.
It is all really important.
And it's all pretty nuanced. We're
It
choosing
is.
complex things.
We
I think if
are.
we came on here and we're like, okay, when people say bad things about you, then they're wrong always. And there's nothing for you to consider about yourself. And everyone else is bad. And just F them and stand in your power and be confident. It would be a lot easier and quicker, but that's not real.
That's not real. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. The truth is a lot more complex.
It is.
All right. Stay self-centered, y'all.
Rooting for you.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Follow us on Instagram at self-centered.pod or connect with us at self-centeredthepod@gmail.com.
Stay self-centered and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.